that's all about.
Hey, I'm not much of a talker, so I asked Dave to come up with me and speak with me. No, hey, I remember when my son, I think he left the room already, but when he was learning how to swim, my sister-in-law was giving him swim lessons, and he knew how to do everything. She said, he can swim, but he wouldn't leave the side of the pool. He would just kind of hold on to the side and kick around by that. And every time I try to get him to go out in the middle and go out, he won't do it. And I talked to him about it. I go, you can swim? No, I can't. You can swim? No, I can't. So finally, we're sitting there one day after lessons, and he wouldn't do it. Everyone else is swimming out there. He wouldn't do it. So I finally asked this question to my wife and to my son. First, I looked at my wife before I walked over to my son and says, do you trust me? And she said, yeah. And I'm like, good, that's good enough. And then I went over to my son. I'm like, son, do you trust me? And he said, yes. And I said, good, remember you said that. And I picked him up, put him over my head, and I threw him right into the middle of the pool. And that's why I'd asked my wife, do you trust me first? And you know what? You know what he did? He swam right back to the side, glaring at me. And then he got out, he's like, why did you do that? Well, I go, no, that's the wrong question. You're like, why did I do that? The question should be, what did you just do? And he realized he swam, never had a problem again. And I realized that question was important in that moment. But that question, do you trust me, is probably the most critical question that we as leaders need to learn how to use and need to learn how to ask. Now, we say we want people to trust us. What I'm talking about is sometimes one of the best things you can do as a leader as you're trying to move forward is to look someone right in the face, eyeball to eyeball, and say, do you trust me? You're going to have to do that. But a lot of us as leaders, sometimes we avoid that question. It's like we're afraid of the answer. We're afraid of the answer. What do? Instead of really asking, do you trust me, we get into these scenarios of you're trying to build towards something. You're trying to get a vision cast. You're trying to do something, and it seems like there's some resistance. And what do? We sit around and we try to plan better. We strategize more. We try to do more envisioning. We try to share more information. We try to do all these things that you need to do. But what we're really doing is many times, I believe many times, at least in my own ministry leadership, is all I'm doing is going around the real problem. And the real problem is their trust. Do you trust me? Because we think someone has a problem with our plan, and it might be they have a problem with the man. And you got to get out there. And so what we want to do is we wanted to just talk about that question a little bit. Yeah. How do you build a culture of trust? Because there are some ways that we try that actually don't work. I was reading some studies here that was talking about the 3 most common trust-building things that organizations try to do to build trust. And they were, first, retreats and trust-building exercises. The second one was thanks and recognition. Saying thank you and recognizing. And then the third one was to actually give more transparency with information, like information about what's going on. Give them more. If they know what's going on, they'll be happy. And what they've discovered in all this research was those things might help enforce trust, but they'll never establish it. And a lot of us, that's the 3 things we use that we think that's how we build our culture. The problem is if you don't have much trust, that's not going to do anything. A trust fall is not going to help your organization move forward at all. So what does build trust? That's what we want to talk about is how do you build a culture of trust? And Dave and I just wanted to walk through, we wrote down 4 things that have really kind of come through our church and they're in our core values and just give you these 4 simple things that we think can help you build that culture of trust. And we actually got through this because we did what was the organization?
Best Christian Workplace.
Best Christian Workplace. We did it for the first time, did the survey, and got like a super high enough score that they wanted to put us on their podcasts and blogs, and they're really interested in how we scored so high on an organization with great trust with our team and everything. And so this is kind of, we had worked on this a little bit. But how do you build a culture of trust? Point number 1, you let leaders lead.
Yeah.
And that's why Dave's going to.
Yeah, so, I mean, that seems really basic, and that gets thrown around a lot, but what does that actually look like, right? What does letting leaders lead? And there's a lot of things that go into that, but one of the things that you have to do is you have to trust them. And the way you build trust is you trust them. right? When they're responsible for something.
Is that one of the powerful things that Randy was
Yeah.
talking about? You
Yes.
should tweet that out.
Tweet that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but when they're in charge of something, assume they are going to do it. Trust that they're going to do it right. And trust that they're going to come to you if they're not sure, right? So you really have to put your trust out there. And what you really want to pay attention to, I say really a lot. I noticed that in the podcast. I don't know why I do that.
It makes people not trust you.
Yeah, I guess. Say really a lot. That should be a bullet point. But there I go. Now I'm in my own head. Right. So trusting, right? So what does that look like? And what you want to do is pay attention to a high stressful moment. Somebody that's in a high stress situation. And so I think about high stress situation. We had a huge group of us go from Arizona to Israel. We had 56 of us got stuck in Newark Airport for 26 hours. We were stuck. There were no planes going from Newark to Israel. That's what we were supposed to do. And so 56 of us were having a bit of a freak out moment. And some of you are in the room, you know what I'm talking about. And then all of a sudden, Monica starts talking to this person. Monica runs our outreach. And then Monica starts talking to this person behind the counter. And then she makes a phone call here. And then leaders in the room, in the airport, are freaking out. They're high stress. They're not handling things well. Monica goes and she stands in line for, 5 hours. And that's not an exaggeration. And she starts talking to the person behind the counter. And individually, one by one, she got all 56 people, one by one, to Israel. Just handle that stress. There were other leaders that would come up and say, I need to get there. I have this. I have that. And Monica had to just calm it down. We're all going to get there. We're doing the best. She's doing the best she can. She calms it all down. The kicker of it all is that was the first time Monica ever flew. Right? That is trusting someone, knowing who she is enough, and putting her out there. I trust her for everything now. I'm like, if we have a problem, I'm bringing Monica. Right? And so, pay attention to those high stressful situations and how do they handle them. Right? And part of that, the trust by trusting, is giving up control. Do not micromanage. Raise your hand if you like to be micromanaged. There was almost a hand over there. I think he might have been pointing at someone. But nobody likes to be micromanaged. Nobody wants to be controlled. And I'll tell you this, if you're in Rock Point, if you're being micromanaged, that means you're not trusted. That means you're someone that we need to take to a better place, and we're going to do it holding your hand. That's the only time we come in and take control and micromanage. And so if you're being micromanaged, what that is saying is, we don't trust you. Whether they're telling you that or not, whether they're having the hard conversation or not, that's really what's happening. Anything you want to say, Bill?
No, you're doing good.
No, thanks. Thanks.
I trust you.
Yeah. Well, and honestly, that's what this is, right? The reason I'm up here is trust, right? The whole talk that we're going to do the next half hour, all of his examples are from 6-7 years ago. He's handed everything off, right? That's why I'm up here. I have recent examples, right? He doesn't manage anybody or anything.
I don't even know what's going on anymore.
That's right. That's right. So that's why I'm up here, right? It's a whole trust thing. So I have to trust he's right for bringing me up here, right? So, yeah, we all make mistakes. But and that also leads to, you've heard give room for failure. I think you also have to give room for success. How do you know somebody's good at something if you don't give them a chance? Right? So you have to put things out there and know they're going to drop the ball on things. And don't see that as failure. See that as an opportunity to help them grow and your organization to grow. Right? But there's been so many times where we think this person is going to be great, and they drop the ball, and they're not who we thought they were. They need to grow more, and we need to help hold their hand a little bit more to get through that. But I think of, with this, is Jen Reher. If anybody knows Jen Reher, she was an admin for our youth area for 6 or 7 years, and she decided she wanted a little bit more responsibility. And I am the one that manages all the construction that you see. So everything that's going on there kind of falls on my shoulders, and I need somebody to help coordinate all that. And I had my coordinator, actually went to another church, got stolen. Thank you, wherever you are. But I needed another coordinator, and Jen is organized, she's detailed. I don't know how much of a leader she is, but so I had a really hard talk with her. I scared the crap out of her. Because I'm like, you're gonna take on a lot of responsibility. And we're talking not, tens and $20, we're talking millions here when we're doing things. And so she decides she's gonna be my coordinator for handling all the building. And so I immediately hand her, she knows nothing about construction, by the way, nothing. And so I immediately hand her, you know what, we need a misting system on our building. Figure out, I need 5 to 6 bids, figure out the best misting system, and she ran with it, right? So I didn't know how good of a leader she was, but I did that, and she came and she'd ask me questions, and most of the time I'm like, I don't care. But I'd try to lead her through it, but...
So apathy is the key to trust.
Yeah, you know that.
Tweet that out.
Right. Yeah. But I hand that off to her knowing she might make mistakes. She doesn't know anything about construction or that. At the same time, she completely was successful in it. And then she knew I trusted her with that and that she would be able to do more things. That was the first project I gave her, and that's a pretty big project, right? And then that also, she starts trusting me. And so the trust starts going both ways. And so it works at every level, where it's Bill to me or me to lead team or to you and your admins. You have to trust and give things off and give up control and understand they're going to do it the best they possibly can. And then you need to step in where they need help.
So that is, what we've been talking about a lot is a lot of this first one, trust them, and let leaders lead. That really kind of applies like there to young leaders. Like we really focus, you got to lean into them.
Yeah, so really handing something off is really saying you're now responsible for this, right? But with responsibility, you also have to give authority and freedom to be able to do whatever the project is. Those three have to go together. If you separate those at all, it's not going to work. You're going to have frustration in the employee, or you're going to be frustrated. So if you give somebody the responsibility and not the authority to get it done, and even giving them the freedom. So Steve-O, I don't know if Steve-O's here. Steve O'Brien's, he's over our kids area. Everybody's, hey, he's right in the front. He's over our kids area, and we were getting ready to hire, I think, 3 employees in the kids area. And we talked months earlier about what our kids area should look like, and structure and all that, and we start moving forward. And I think we actually put an ad out there to hire somebody. And then Steve-O starts talking to his team. And then he comes up to me, he talks to Jeff, and he's like, I think we need to completely restructure kids. I think the way we're going isn't going to work, and we can expand more, we can grow a lot more, and the leaders are better off if we change structure completely in this area. And he talked to Amy and Melissa, and they all come up with this idea. And I talked to Jeff, and Jeff ends up talking to Steve-O, and he literally tells Steve-O, that's not how I'd do it. But you're over this area. You are responsible for it. You're accountable for it. We're going to give you the tools to be able to do it this way. And we also had the conversation of, what if Steve gets hit by a bus? Is it still going to be a structure that we can do? No offense, Steve. Right? But it's really that we gave him, he has the responsibility. We didn't want to cuff him, right? We didn't want his hands cuffed to where he can't even do his job in the way he thinks it needs to be done. And then if it doesn't go well, is it Steve's fault or the structure's fault? You don't know at that point. But if you give him complete freedom to do it, you know who to give the victory to, right? Well,
or blame.
Christ always. Yeah, or blame. I was trying not to go negative. I tried to turn the corner. Yeah, right? But that is trusting, right? Giving the responsibility, the authority, and the freedom, but also holding accountable.
Well, with that though, is like you said, Liz, for some of you, like, well, what if I'm not the lead, like the primary leader? All this sounds like it's how do you lead people that respond to you or volunteers. But what if your struggle is, but I am being controlled when I am a leader that's not letting this happen. You can lead up. Mm-hmm. You can lead up. And you know how you do it? I think you need to use the same most important question every leader gets. You need to look at whoever you think is holding you back and say, do you trust me? Yeah. We argue, you try to say, I know how to do this. Okay, you're trying to make this business. Sometimes you just got to look them in the face and go, do you trust me? The question is, though, you got to be ready for the answer.
Yeah.
You have to be ready for the answer and ready for what does it mean to unpackage that answer. Because when you ask someone, do you trust me? Whether you get a yes or a no, that's good. Because now you know where to go next.
Yeah, so Mario is a perfect example of this. So Mario Delgado, he is, what is he? He's over our seminary,
yeah.
Castile. He focuses on the high school next door. That's his job, right? But he has come to Jeff and I twice.
Apathy is the key to trust.
Yes, but he's come to us twice, and he's also gone to the finance team. But he is one that asks constantly, give me more responsibility. I want more. And so he's the one person that has gone to the finance team and made the finance team cry, right? Because he is so passionate, and he wants to do what God's calling him to do and make an impact on this community. And so the finance team, he actually asked for too little. The finance team would have handed over a lot more, but he'll learn. But he's also
nobody tell him that.
Yeah, yeah. But he's also come to Jeff and I and said, look, I want, this is the direction I want to go. Is there any reason I can't do that? He's constantly asking, can I do this? Do you trust me to take this on? And with being a young leader, the answer, we want to say yes every time, but being a young leader, there's things that he needs to learn, right? There's some responsibilities that he has to learn to build trust other ways, right? Is that my son back there? Hey. I'm sorry, I got distracted. But with Mario, so we give him that freedom, we give him that, but we also give him the resources to be successful. And so Mario, I can say he is taking off. And Bill doesn't know this, I learned this yesterday. This is the second year that Chandler School District has named us Volunteer of the Year. Named Rock Point, Volunteer of the Year. It gets better. The city of Chandler is naming us Volunteer of the Year. We're in Queen Creek. I don't know if they know that, right? It gets better. The newspaper, the Tribune, said, what's the best church in Gilbert? Rock Point Church, #1 church in Gilbert. That's because we have people like Mario that's going after it, right? We have people like Tim Larson that puts on the best Christmas light show you've ever seen. And if you haven't, you got to come next year. That's given Monica the freedom to go after the community. And our goal isn't those awards. Our goal is making a difference in the community, right? And that's what we're accomplishing through trusting our young leaders. And there's going to be bumps, but working through those for the betterment of the community and the church.
And we spent the most time on this first point because it's so critical to let leaders lead. And what does that really mean? Because you could be a micromanager, you say you think you're letting them lead, but you're not. And in the end, to kind of sum it up, I love this quote from Ronald Reagan. I think I got to. Some people spend an entire lifetime wondering if they made a difference in the world, but the Marines don't have that problem. Our goal is some people in ministry spend their whole time wondering if they made a difference in the world. Our staff doesn't have that problem. That's our goal, to let them lead, not to use them as pawns just to get everything you want done, but how are we supposed to go after this together? That's the first key ingredient to lead. The next thing comes off of our core values is if we're not authentic, we're not effective. In other words, your character makes you a leader worth following. You better have character, and you better be authentic. It can't be, people know if you're just saying all the right things to try to get them to trust you, if you're giving them a kind of a spiel or whatever. You have to really, truly be authentic. And what I mean by that is a lot of times you think you're being authentic when you just share, like one of the things that study said doesn't build a lot of trust is being more open about information. We can share plans and let everybody on the inside of what's going on. The problem is, to be authentic, you don't just share content. You have to share intent. You have to share the heart, the why, and all, not just the what, the how. You have to be willing to talk through the heart of the matter of why you want to do stuff. And the problem with that is makes a struggle. Sometimes when you talk heart, it can get a little bit heated. And it's okay. You gotta have that room to have those conversations. You have to be real. If you're upset, say, hey, I'm a little bit upset right now. If you're confused, I'm confused. If you're struggling with trust, I'm really having a hard time. We want to do this because the reality is, a lot of times, I already said this once, but a lot of times people are not disagreeing with your plan, they're disagreeing with you. And we argue the plan. Waste a lot of time. There's been about 5 or 6 key pivotal times in the history of this church that I had just to look someone in the face and say, you do trust me. Stop the whole meeting. We're arguing and things were, and I just finally said, hey, do you trust me? And if the answer is yes, can we just go this way? Can you just follow us? Just follow and let's see where this goes. And not go all in with us and see where it goes. And you have to have those hard conversations. And when you do that, you're being vulnerable is what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And in doing that, if you're going to do that, you have to truly be vulnerable. What I mean by that is you have to own the trust you were given. I think a lot of us will get to that point, I know it's easy, but if you say, do you trust me? And they say yes, and then they go with you. If where you go doesn't work, you better not be the first one lining up with a bunch of excuses. You should man up, woman up, whatever, and stand there and just say, hey, you trusted me, and I was wrong. Should have trusted you. We had one season we had when we were about to build this building years ago. The economy, the whole thing went down 2008. We had to slow down, and it was the only time we went back. We had to actually tighten up the budget, and we actually had to cut some salary. That's the only place we had to go. And so we looked at our staffing, and back then we weren't really big, so we could either get rid of 3 or 4 people that made nothing, called youth pastors, or we had one guy staff that was kind of one of our higher up. He was the only one that in one layoff we could clear out all the salary. And what he was doing, he was a critical guy, but he was good. But what we just had to make a decision. Well, his wife was on staff too, both of them. And I brought him in, and we had built a lot. I go, do you guys trust me? Yeah, I go, I got to lay you off. But now I don't know, is that going to give you a problem? But I go, we want to bring you back. I know this and all this stuff. And I just said, they gave their reasons why, and I said, listen, I get it, but do you trust me? Not do you trust the organization, do you trust me? And they said yes. They said, we'll stay, we're not going to get uninvolved. But then this last 10%, the wife looked at me and said, hey, I trust you. I'll have a good attitude. But I just got to tell you, I think you made the biggest mistake because you only looked at job description. You just laid off your best pastor, like a pastoral heart person, and at the size we are, I think you're going to regret this. And I said, you might be right. Within 3 months, we realized I'd made a horrible mistake. And we did whatever it took, and we got this guy back on staff within 6 months. He's still on staff now. He's our facilities director of everything, and he disciples more people and counsels more people than probably anyone on our staff. He's amazing. But see, I had to say, do you trust me? They went through the process, but I'm telling you, how you keep that trust going is on the back end. If they feel if you give the culture that they can tell you what they think is wrong, and you can own it. Vulnerability is not just saying, do you trust me, and here's an idea, is you have to own the trust you were given. Because if we're not authentic, we're not effective. And so you got to be willing to do that. So, and that really, you got to say that last 10% is what you got to be willing to talk about.
And we use that phrase at Rockpoint, say the last 10%. And that's where the personal side comes in, right? Because you can come up with the best solutions and everybody's like, yeah, that's the way we should go. But then you have the conversation that says, okay, say the last 10%. And that's where being vulnerable is everything. That's when you put your heart out and say, you know what? I agree with this, but because of this, I'm devastated. Or this is going to be really hard for me moving forward, or whatever it is. And that is going to be your biggest conversation, that last 10% conversation, not the solution you came up with to solve whatever problem you thought it was. Right? It's getting to the heart of this. And there was a time where our lead team, we have a great lead team. We've always had a pretty good lead team. No, we have a great lead team. And our lead team, I started having conversations one-on-one with our lead team, and there was starting to be some backbiting and conversations after the meeting. And we had this lead team retreat coming up. And I told Bill, I'm like,
let's do a trust fall, and that'll fix everything.
Yeah, we need to, yeah. We need this retreat to fix some things. And so it was before Christmas a while back, and we called it the Festivus for the rest of us. And
the airing of the grievances.
It started with the airing of the grievances. But Bill and I had a hard conversation before that, talking about what could happen, right? And what we said was we have to come out of that with complete trust in the lead team, with the lead team. The staff, that was right after our Christian workplace survey where we scored so high. The staff trusted lead team. Lead team didn't trust each other, right? That's a huge problem. So we go up there and we're like, okay, we're going to have the hard conversation. What issue do you have with every person on the lead team? And we went around and said, you're putting it all out on the table right now.
And it was only a 3-day retreat, and if you're a planner, you want to do, and we said, we'll take the whole first day if we need to, which we did. We went into the whole next morning. And I said, if you want to build trust, I'll go first. So I said, hey, I'll go first. Does anybody have any issue with me, no matter what? I want it out in the open here. Let's just talk about it. Let's be real. And I'll be honest, I thought, they don't have any issues with me, so it'll be a safe bet. Hands went up.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did. Every lead team member, there was an issue that one or all of the lead team members had.
It came down to one simple thing, but it was what's so funny is I said, all right, well, you're right. All right, well, when I start to do that in a meeting, just tell me. Okay, do you trust me? Just tell me. The next day, when we got past all this, the very first concept of actual planning, I started doing it. And hey, remember when you said to tell you when you do that thing? Yeah, you're doing that thing. But by going, we went one by one, and everybody kind of shared. There was crying.
Yeah. Well, and we also gave each other complete freedom to approach me. Help me work through this when we get back to the valley. Right? Help me as I'm doing this. Point it out to me. Help me on my journey. Right? We gave each other that.
Yeah. And we put the light on the situation.
Yeah.
So you don't have to be afraid of it. Instead of mumbling, well, he's like this. Well, we've already said it to his face, into your face. So now we can talk about it when we go into it. It kind of takes the power out of it. Yeah. That was hard. I mean, we had to really look at everyone and say, hey, we're not stopping till we do this. Yeah. Because we need to, and it worked out well. So sometimes you got to have those moments. Because if you're not authentic, you're not going to be effective. You can put on that mask and look like you're a happy family, but you got to deal with the crud. So let leaders lead, be authentic. And then the third one, this is going to sound like a simple one, but I'm going to tell you, if you really want to build a culture of trust as the leader, and this especially for all of you lead pastors and lead directors, the higher up you have responsibility, you've got to embrace this with all your heart. The room is always better. The room is always better. You see, I think sometimes where you don't get trust from your team, it's really the deeper problem is because you really don't trust them. And so you come into a room and you're the leader, and you have this weird idea in the Bible that means to be the leader means all the ideas come from you. They're just the minions, and you come in, and so you go into a lot of meetings where there's vision, and you come into this scenario saying, I have to get everybody on the exact same, every little jot and tittle of my plans, when the reality is if you really get some good leaders around you and you let leaders lead, and they like to lead, they actually are pretty bright and they're sharp, go into a room and embrace the idea that I will come out of this room with a better plan than the one I walked into this room with. If you believe that and get a team around you like that, I guarantee it'll work. And there's some little tricks I've learned. Now, this is going to sound stupid, but if you're like me, some of you are you think in order to get my team on the same page, you spend so much time on stuff. Matter of fact, you might even make a presentation. You get graphics, you get images, you get well-crafted things. You want to work out that present. You know what? That's what you need to land to your people, the church. But to your primary team, whenever I have a plan that I got to bring in a vision idea, I know the heart of the heart. As the primary leader, I know the very heart of what I can't compromise. This I just know with all my heart I need them to trust me on. But other than that, the way we go about doing it can be altered. So I do a stupid little trick. If I'm going to print something up, I don't even proofread it. I leave spelling errors and I just leave it because you know what? Have you ever noticed that the more you work on a piece of art, the less you want to listen to someone try to change it? To many of us as leaders, your plans is like your painting. And if you finish the whole thing, you're not going to go into the room and say, we're going to come up with a better plan for this. You're going to go into the room and fight for your how. And if you trust the room, I guarantee you'll leave with a better how than you came into. And guess what? People love being a part of that. Matter of fact, even if you have the person that has nothing to offer, but they're really good at spell check, they'll feel like they had something to do because they corrected all your bad grammar. It's a dumb idea. I'm telling you, you're looking at me like crazy. It's worked a million times with me. And you know, I've been shocked at how many times that I went and go, I would have never thought to do it that way. But I'm so glad I didn't think of how I wanted to do it and spend all that emotional energy. So then I'm in a meeting defending my idea rather than getting to the best plan. So the room is always better. And if you're like, there is no way my room is always better, then you need to get a better room. You got to be honest with yourself. You got to be honest, like, I don't trust any of these people and I don't think they can do the job. Then quit micromanaging, controlling, not letting them lead, setting up systems that are going to make them fail and then blaming them. Just micromanage them out to their car.
And let it be their idea.
Yeah.
Right? Let it be their idea and give credit. Right? That's going to build them up. That's going to encourage so much when they're a part of the process, but then they're also like pointed out that, man, you did awesome. Yeah. You're a part of it.
In other words, you got to quote the great theologian Vanilla Ice. You got to stop, collaborate, and listen.
Did I just, up here, I did that?
Now you know I let him talk more. And then the fourth one, the final one is be bulldozers, not barriers. It's one of our phrases. If you're a leader, your job is to be a bulldozer, not a barrier. In other words, as you build systems, you need policies, but systems and policies are there to serve ministry, not to be a barrier to ministry. And I know as a church gets bigger, we just added 14 staff people. Every time we add staff people, I mean, what we call as simple as possible would probably be mind-numbingly complex to some of you in the room. And then there's some of you in this room that what we do is probably, what they do is more complex than we do. Simple gets more complex the larger it gets. So it's not one size fits all. But the dynamic tension you have to live in as you grow an organization is how do you add the systems and policies that are successful and sustainable, but also flexible, and that they can and they always serve the mission, not the other way around. Because as you get larger, it gets weird, and then people will like try to stamp down and control it. And the reality is, sometimes as you get larger, you end up building these systems that you think, hey, we got to have systems. But of course, you got to have people looking over the finance. You got to have things to do, but you got to build a system that it's really about getting the mission accomplished. And you can fall into this trap of you become like the barrier to it. Instead of being the one that bulldozes the way for your team, If you're leading a team, your job is to clear the way for them, is to go through. But if you start building it seem like you're a guard tower kind of at a gate, you're going to hold yourself back.
Yeah, well, and that's, if work stops because everybody's waiting for a yes or a no from you, you're a barrier, right? You need to get out of the way. You need to get out of those things that you don't need to be a part of. And so, and I take the be a servant leader to heart, right? No matter what position you're in, you need to be a servant leader. And what does that look like? I've heard open door policies, and then I've heard some people, I don't do an open door policy because I need to stay healthy and that. And here's the thing, I have an open door policy, and when somebody comes in, I want them to present what they need my help with. And it might be just a sounding board. Am I taking crazy pills? But this, I want to add value to them. I don't need them adding value to me, right? Because if I'm adding value to them, when we're having a conversation and they can walk away with a better understanding of how to move forward, that I helped them do that. I don't need to bring them into my room to help me do my job. I want them in my room so I can help them, right? And just being that servant and adding that value. And that's from, I do that every day. My door is wide open. It's rare my door is closed. And so when somebody comes in, I drop what I'm doing and I'm paying attention to them because I serve them. And that's top to bottom at our organization, right? And the other thing with being the bulldozer is, and this might sound crazy, but honor your staff. I don't mean that sounds crazy. I mean being part of not being the bulldozer. Honor your staff, right? That's pay them what they're worth, honor their time. If they're stressed out, send them home. We've done that I don't know how many times. You're not feeling whatever, go home. You're stressed out. The organization is better off with you at home than you here right now, and honoring them. And so we had a few years ago, like most churches, staff, there were people having lots of babies and little kids, and it became a barrier to getting work done. And so we implemented during spring break, fall break, and over the summer.
Not the process of having the babies. That wasn't the barrier.
That wasn't the barrier. Yeah. So spring break, fall break, and summer, we do childcare. Is it 2 days a week? 3 days? 2. See, I gave up control on that. But that allows the people with young kids to have a place to bring their kids. One, it saves them money. We're honoring them. And it's a small line item on our budget, but it shows that we care. And to be able to show you care, you actually have to know them well enough to actually care, right? And find those areas and ways to do that. And then one of the best stories that I have with being the bulldozer is our finance team. Our finance team, the way it's set up, when we first kind of developed a finance team, I talked to Bill, I'm like, hey, do you want me to say, hey, there's an iceberg up ahead, or hit it and then say, that was an iceberg, right? That's when we started our finance team. And so, but it has come a long way. And so right now, our finance team is a bulldozer. He just talked about we were hired 14 new staff. We actually went to the finance team and said, look, based on budget and all this, we need a lot more than that, staff-wise. But we can do 10, 9 or 10. If the finance team, looking at the numbers, will that work in our budget? And they looked at us and said, no, you need 14. They found the way to get that next level. Because I told them, like, here's priority 1, here's priority 2, here's priority 3. And they're like, you need to get the 14. And so they figured out a way to fund that. And that's their attitude with everything. How do we help ministry happen instead of getting in the way of ministry? We try to do that with all our teams, but I know a lot of people's finance teams are their barrier, and they blame them. That's not how it is at Rockpoint, and I would really have that conversation with whoever's leading your finances.
And one of the things we did is we set up our finance team as they're like usually the villains. Well, we would do this, but Bob in finance said no. We set them up to be the heroes. Mm-hmm. And we establish, when we bring someone on, I go, hey, your job is to help us figure out how to bust past this. Your job is to be the hero in the scenario, not the villain. You save the day, you manage it, we trust you, you trust us. In other words, when we start our finance and when we do anything in ministry, we go back to that passage where Jesus says, upon this rock himself I will build my church. But then he said, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. I don't know about you, but I have never seen a war movie or heard about a combat scene where an army says, let's send in the gates. You never had an army look out, oh no, there's a regiment of gates rolling in on us. They're going to beat us. No, the gates are not an offensive weapon, they're a defensive weapon. But too often at church, we think we roll up in the gates and Satan's attacking us all the time. We're supposed to be on the offense, folks. We're the ones that are supposed to go into the world, and we're supposed to be gate crashers. We're supposed to be barrier breakers and go in. But the problem is you get larger, you get a finance team, sometimes you land this subtle idea that they're supposed to be the gatekeepers instead of the gate crashers. And you need them to understand, you need all your teams to understand our job, and you need to be a leader that says, how do I help you crash gates, not build gates? And too many times as we get bigger, all of a sudden our policies, our teams, our finance, it starts to become one big, huge, like, as you get bigger, we got this big piece of property, we got this organization, we better protect it now. Let's build the gates and not let anything take it apart. It's like we're supposed to go out there and crash through some gates and do all that, and we struggle with that. And I think one of the best ways to do that is as a leader, you need to know what is the things you do that is irreplaceable. And lean into that. And then find a team that you can trust. Because that thing you hate to do, that you keep doing, we make this weird assumption that if I hate to do it, everybody must hate to do it. So you just slave on doing it. You realize there's people gifted that what you hate, it's their favorite thing in the whole world to do. Find that person. Get them on your team. One of the reasons we have a hard time with trust is especially a lot of guys I see, you'll build a lead team, and you build a lead team that's all you. That's terrible. If my lead team was all me, we would just laugh, yell, fight, have fun, dream big dreams, and do nothing. Yeah. That's just the way it would be. I have to put people on my team that naturally, like, oh, we're going to fight on this. But that's the process. Because that's what we need to be gate crashers. Yeah. To be gate crashers. Like you had a few things you're going to say about trust with us. And
so really, those are the 4 points. And really, I'm just going to close with what my Friday morning looks like. So my Friday morning, I try not to set any meetings. If Haley's in the room, thank you for protecting that for me. But my Friday morning, a lot of people wonder what I'm doing Friday morning. But Friday morning, I go over these statements. And then I get into the Word. And I'm going to share with you what these statements are. And to me, this is trust. This is what it needs to look like, no matter what level you are and who your boss is. This is what you need to say about your boss, and your statements need to be. And if they aren't, you need to get to a place where you can. So my Friday starts with me looking at these. It's on my phone. Bill has my complete trust and confidence in anything and everything. I have Bill's back, and I protect him and his family. I recognize Bill is directed from God. I handle crap that Bill doesn't have to. I do my best to implement and lead to achieve his vision. And the biggest one is Bill carries the weight and responsibility for the entire organization, but he doesn't do most of it, of what happens here in the organization. And I know that is an extremely heavy burden, and I need to help him with that. That's my Friday morning. Can you have those statements? Can you talk like that about your boss? And what's the barrier that you have that is keeping you from having that mindset toward them?
When you build a trust like that, the trust I have with Dave, here we are building this huge building, and there's been times when he's in a meeting where they had to do some changes on designs and things like that, and the that architects automatically ask, well, when can you get approval from Bill? Like, because you always assume that the lead guy's going to have to sign off. And he goes, I don't need to get approval from Bill. Like, what? They go, I'm authorizing it right now. Bill will deal with it. and it's true. That's how you build. I have that trust from him because I give him that trust. And it's something that doesn't happen. It's like roller skating uphill. You're either working really hard to go up or you're going down. There's kind of not much in between that. And that's my, to close this up and see if there's any questions, is I wrote this down, is like leadership is always asking people if they trust you. I don't care what you call it, vision casting, whatever you are doing as a leader, it's always asking someone to trust you. So why not just cut through the middleman and half the time when you need to, just ask them that. Do you trust me? My final little illustration here is I'm sitting here, and years ago, you guys know Randy Deal. He's up here. He was the original founding executive pastor. He had Dave's job when we started the church. And as we grew, we got to that point that, he came to keep me from bottlenecking the place, but then we got so big that now he became the bottleneck, so we had to develop a lead team. Basically, we were splitting his job in multiple directions. We were going to split it into multiple lead directors. And we did, and it started to work, but then there became a trust issue. And Randy and another person on our lead team didn't trust each other. And we tried and tried and tried, and Randy over and over again says, all right, I'm going to choose to trust, I'm going to choose to trust, I'm going to choose, but it just wasn't where there was just things coming up. And I felt like I was in a real conundrum as we kept working through this, because what he didn't trust, I'm not saying he was completely always wrong, but I knew that the trust issue wasn't at a level that it was like, I need to let that other person go. There's no reason why it's just like, can you guys figure this out? And so we're all caught in this trap because it kept hurting the organization over and over and over again. And we'd have another meeting and we'd say, hey, let's plan it this way. Let's try to do it that way. Let's do it this way. And finally, we were actually heading up to one of these meetings one day. And I stopped the car and I looked at him and I said, Randy, do you trust me? He said, yes. I go, there is no way this works if you two can't trust each other. And I have no grounds to get rid of the other person. And I don't know what to do about that. He goes, let me pray about that. Came to my house the next morning, and he handed me his resignation. And he left staff. You know what? And he pulled away. But I trusted him. I knew his personality was he had to just be done. So there was no goodbye. Some of the staff people were a little bit frustrated with him. I told them that, but it's like, I go, he is not trying to do something bad. He's protecting his heart, but he resigned right away because we had a conversation before we started this church when we came out. It says, you're the leader, and if we ever have a disagreement, whoever, as long as you're, as long as someone's not doing something ungodly, he goes, he knew that being the XO of this ship meant if I need to go to save the ship, I will, and he did. And I knew when he pulled away, I had his back with our staff because I knew there's like, hey, Randy is protecting me. He's protecting this church. And both of us said when we started this church that the church, the people, what God's doing is more important than either one of us. So we're still friends. I did talk him into writing a letter that I read to the church and bawled my brains out. And then he was gone for 5 years. He's now on our lead team. Matter of fact, when we had that big lead team retreat, we had to do you trust, and we finally got through it. Then we started saying, what's our new plan and our vision? Out of that, after we were all good again, we had a perfect job on a lead level that was perfect for him. And I said, hey, this is a crazy idea, but a lot of you came since him, but what about Randy? There was tears and excitement, and I was able to invite him back. And it was because the entire time we were both willing as friends to always look each other in the face and say, do you trust me? Do you trust me? And I'm so happy that he's back. And we stayed friends and we engaged in ministry and all that. And you know what's funny about it? So what I'm saying is sometimes the do you trust me question leads to something sad. It leads to something that looks like is a failure. It leads to something, wow, two people that started a church together and we were about to move into this building. So he got to be like Moses. He just saw it from Mount Nebo and didn't get to come in. But what looked like a bad thing, saying, do we trust each other? And getting the answer, yes, we got out of the way for God to do what he needed to do. And now here's where we are. So like I said, do you trust me is the most important question a leader can ever ask. And in reality, everything you do as a leader is asking people to trust you. So thanks for letting us share. Thanks for trusting us with your time.
Yeah.
And